App Planning for Success. Brought to you by Software Accelerator Playbook. On Instagram at S.A.Playbook. Today on the podcast, we are talking about how to make it easier for people to get into the system when you have developed, something that you think is, delivering value to somebody, and you want to get them, signed up and ready to go. There's lots of different ways to get people in that will either, deter people and make people either, get frustrated, give up and leave, or get people in and using your app. Now, one thing to consider here is that you could potentially give people an experience of what your app actually is and what it actually does before they are required to sign up. So there's all sorts of gates you can put up. The most typical gate is, hey, before you see anything behind the door, you need to enter in, your name, your password, or, connect with Google or Facebook or whatever else it is. And once you've got that, then you can go get value. But you can actually flip that. You can actually give value first, and then as people try to then, save their work, or as they try to, do some sort of upgraded feature or whatever it is, then you gate it, and then you say, hey, in order to, go past this gate, then you need to give us an email or whatever else. Now, the advantage in that case is that instead of stopping people when they're excited to get value out of it and saying, no, you got to give me an email first if you want to get value, you give them a taste of the value first. And as they then, go in and they start using the thing, they start seeing, this is beneficial to me. This is valuable to me. And then at that point, then when you ask them for an email address later, they more easily give it. Now, this can also backfire. This can also, people can also get into the software and then decide, well, this actually isn't what I want, and I'm going to go somewhere else instead. Or, maybe they play with it a little bit, and then instead of dropping their email address, they say, well, maybe I'll come back to play with this a little bit later. And then you've got no way of contacting them again. You've got no way of, reaching out to them and saying, hey, I saw you tried, the free version, come back again, or whatever else it is, all your, email drip sequences and the way that you can market to bring people back. So it's not a one-size-fits-all scenario, and really ultimately should be tested, right? How many people are you getting typically if you gate it the one way, and if you then try a different way and you let people, get some value out of it first, are you getting way more signups? Is there a metric that you can measure that is so different and you can go, oh, this way is obviously better? So Netflix has been working on their front page, their front door, for years now to optimize it, to figure out how can we get the maximum number of people in, what do we have to do to get people going. And they did go through a season where you were allowed to go through their catalog. Even if you didn't have an account, you could go look through their catalog, and Netflix's hope in allowing you to do that was that you would then be able to maybe find a title that you liked, and that would be the impetus for you to be able to sign up. That would be the reason why you would sign up. But what they've found is that actually doesn't drive the most conversions. I'm not sure exactly the reason, but I can imagine that some people are, getting lost in, the sea of movie titles, getting a little bit overwhelmed with it and just saying, oh, I'll come back later and do this, and then bailing and not signing up. And so now if you go to Netflix, unless they're split testing something else, every time I've been checking it in the past few months, this is what it's been looking like, is that from the beginning, they're not letting you peek behind the curtain. They are instead saying, if you want to proceed, enter your information, and then from there, then you can get in. So this is not by accident. This is not Netflix just saying, hey, we need to make, millions and millions of dollars. Let's just kind of throw something up and see if it works. They are methodically testing to see what is the absolute best way to get people in. So as you are moving forward with your app, don't discount the idea that a decent amount of your workload is going to be, how do we get people to use this thing? Unless it's an internal tool, right? Unless you are, unless you're using something internally, and at that point when you finish your app, it's immediately valuable to you. If you've got to get people to come into your app, then it serves you to test different methods for how to let people in. And as you're building it, if you can kind of keep that in mind as a part of the plan for, hey, we don't just want to have a sign up register flow that blocks people from getting value. We do want to let them, play with this or play with that. And then at this point in time, then we would need to block them, et cetera, et cetera. If that's a part of your plan, if that's a part of, before you even go into development, you're already talking about the marketing of how you're going to let people get value out of it first, then it's much easier for the developers to kind of plan that into the structure of how they code the software, so that then when you want to take those testing measures to figure out, the best way to do something, that you are, you're already set there. You don't have to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, we need to rip everything apart and reconfigure it in order to do this. You just say, hey, remember when we talked about, going this way or that, I'd like you to turn on that module now. And then they've got to make, slight code changes versus a complete rewrite. So, all in all, what I want you to come away from this is that the marketing of the platform isn't necessarily separate from the development, that the marketing plan and the marketing thought of how people are going to flow in is just as important as actually technically getting it created. What you don't want is to have a technically wonderful piece of software that does what you wanted it to do and 0 users. That just doesn't serve you at all. I was just talking to somebody the other day who's dealing with that exactly. I think they said that they spent about $50,000 and they've got this software that works, but they don't have any users. And how frustrating must that be to have spent all the time, all the energy, all the pouring your heart and soul into this thing, and you get it technically working, but then you don't have any users. So if while you're planning it, if you're already thinking of how do we get users in, what's going to be the best method to get people in, what are different methods that we can test to get people in and get people value, how will we attract people, how will we get people to say yes to our app, that if that's a part of your plan on the front end, then you're going to have more success when you get that technically accurate piece of software, that you also have the users, you also have the attention of the users, and you have an easy way of bringing them in that is more of a fun approach, maybe letting them create a project, first before creating their account, and then once they put that time in to create their profile, upload their picture, create whatever else, then at that point it says, hey, do you want to save this? Just enter your email address, and then it can do everything else for them. Just with an email address, your developer could hook something up where, let's say if they're creating a project, right? They're adding their photo, they're adding a project name, they're adding description, whatever else. If they just add their email, just one extra field, if they add that email, then automatically on creation of that project, it could also create a user account. It could also send them an email saying, hey, you've been registered, here's the link to get in, or here's the link to set your password. And then also create the project and attribute it to that user. That's a really, really nice flow for the user, as opposed to, enter your email, enter your phone, enter password, enter confirm password, enter your birthday, click this, click this, click this, click this, where most people, when they see, an unending form or a long form, percentage-wise, a certain percentage are just bailing. Versus if you have a fun flow where they're actually creating the thing, or they're getting the value, they're entering information that will help them get the value, then, they're having fun from the beginning. And then now you just ask for a little email address, and that can take care of the whole other registration flow. That kind of a method for testing, for getting people into the software, might actually, tilt the balance, in your favor, where, a certain percentage would bail on a long form where they haven't gotten any value. Now, if they're getting value from the beginning and the form is short and all they have to enter in is their email address to have a whole account, and you can follow up with them to set their password or follow up with them for anything else, you might end up with more people in your software. So again, you have to test this for yourself, but as you are planning, being cognizant of this, thinking about this as you're planning, is a part of the success. that you don't want that to be an afterthought. Oh yeah, later, oh, let's try this or let's try that, because then you might have to rip something apart that, if it could have been in the plan to begin with, then it would have been much easier to deal with and would have cost you less development time, less planning, less everything, if, in whole, because you are planning that ahead of time, as opposed to later trying to go back and rip the thing apart. Hope this has been helpful to you, and I will see you tomorrow.